model which is given by Patridge. Just wait for a moment. Intelligence evaluates how an individual perceives their emotional abilities. Trait is a kind of personality characteristic, personality trait which is relatively fixed, permanent. Okay. So it's a debate that is it a trait or an ability. This is also a short model. Let's go through it quickly. So it's given by Konstantin Vasily Patridze. Just remember the names, remember the models they have given, remember the components. All these consist of your will be there in your exams. The questions, the multiple choice questions regarding that, who has given the trait model or what model has been given by Patridze, like these. Okay, Ramanandan, sorry. He provides a very different understanding of emotional intelligence than the ability model, because ability model said that emotional intelligence is the ability, so it is different from that ability model because it said that it is a trait. Ability model is more logical than the trait model because it focuses on the outward results, whereas the trait model is less logical because it focuses on the inward processes, that is emotional perception. So the difference is the outward results and logic, as well as the less logical and the emotional focus on the emotional perception more. One of the recent models of emotional intelligence was published in 2009 by Patridge and colleagues and marks a break from the idea that emotional intelligence is ability-based. So after this model came into existence, there's a break between the idea that the emotional intelligence is something which is ability-based. After this model, now the debate starts that is it ability-based or trait-based. It proposes that people have as part of their personalities a number of emotional self-perceptions and emotional traits. According to this model, it says that people have as part of their personalities some emotional self-perceptions about themselves, as well as some emotional traits or characters. They have that as a part of their personality. Okay, this is not the ability, but their personality trait. Trait emotional intelligence evaluates how an individual perceives their emotional abilities, how they are perceiving their own emotional self. It is based on the emotional self-perception, that how we are perceiving our own emotional abilities. These emotional abilities and their perception of them then affect their behaviors, and the way we perceive our own emotional abilities have an impact on the behaviors as well as the perception of the cognitive and behavioral abilities as well. So perception of emotional abilities have an impact on the perception of cognitive and behavioral abilities and also affect our behavior. And it is very this is less logical than the ability model because it is not possible to measure it scientifically, because it is talking about the emotional self perception, so it is not possible to check it, to experiment on it like we can do in ability model. That is why it is less logical than the ability model. So there are emotional self perceptions and there are emotional traits that make our personality and individuals personalities. This emotional self-perceptions, perceiving our own emotions, as well as having some emotional traits, are the both together are the part of our personality. That is why it is known as the trait model of emotional intelligence, because it considers them as a trait. It essentially has to be conducted within a framework of understanding an individual's personality. So without understanding a person's personality, it is not possible to evaluate this model. In case a person wants to conduct it, wants to understand it, it is important to understand a person's personality, without which it is not possible to understand the trait model of emotional intelligence. It is because it relies so heavily on personality characteristics, it is impossible to evaluate someone's EQ using the trait model without performing a personality evaluation. So it relies so heavily on personality characteristics that it is important for everyone, in order to evaluate a person's emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, it is very important to evaluate a person's personality first, or along with that. Without evaluating a person's personality, it is not possible to evaluate a person's emotional intelligence according to this trait model given by Patridze. These traits are not measured in the scientific sense. They cannot be measured, but instead they can be just measured by the self-report. People needs to report their own emotions themselves, but we cannot test them objectively, we cannot test them scientifically, but we can interview people, we can ask them. So this can only be tested by self-report. This assumes that the respondent is able to accurately describe his or her own traits, and we can assume that because we have to ask the respondent himself about his own self-perceptions, about his own emotions and his emotional traits, so we can assume that he may describe it accurately. He can describe his own traits more accurately, but we cannot test them scientifically. That is why ability model is more considered more logical than the trait model. Okay. So this is all about trait model. I think there are two more slides, which suggest that a questionnaire, trait emotional intelligence questionnaire, and this is the abbreviation TAIQUE is the abbreviation for this questionnaire, and it is used to measure this emotional intelligence. So because of this model, or we can say in the light of this model, we can understand a person's emotional intelligence in combination with the evaluation of a person's personality. Without evaluation of a person's personality, the evaluation of a person's emotional intelligence according to this trait model will not be complete. And it is different from other models because other models we suggest that emotional intelligence is a brain-based ability, not an environmental aspect of personality. This model suggests that this is different from other emotional intelligence models because this suggests that emotional intelligence is more of a brain-based ability, not the environmental aspect of personality. Sorry, the opposite of that is true. That other models said that it's a other model said that it's a brain-based ability, not an environmental aspect of personality. But this model says that it's an environmental aspect of personality, not a brain-based ability. Okay. So they defined the person who has ये questionnaire क्या है? क्या है means I mean a questionnaire is to measure a person's emotional intelligence, and as far as this model is concerned, this model is this questionnaire is according to this model because without evaluating a person's personality, we cannot understand one's emotional intelligence. So according to this model, this is the questionnaire to measure emotional intelligence because it may require it may also have statements regarding personality, so it will also evaluate one's personality in combination with the emotional intelligence statements. So this is a particular, okay, not a general questionnaire. So Packard's defined trait as a model as a constellation of emotional self-perceptions located at the lower levels of personality. So it includes personality where and the lower levels of that personality, there are a constellation of various emotional self-perceptions that we perceive about ourselves. So this is about the trait model, and